he also thought, well, if we're going to do it, let's do it well, and let's make sure that we can coordinate and improve the services that are being provided for refugees when they arrive. And so that's what I have been doing now for a couple of years. So at one level, my job is to try and make sure that the Commonwealth government, the state government agencies work together in a coordinated way. Obviously, a lot of my focus is on the New South Wales government services and programs, and making sure that health and education and justice, etc., work well together. Department of Industry works well together. The good news is, I think, that when you look at the settlement services provided to refugees in Australia and in New South Wales, they are generally of a very high level indeed. And I say that, by international standards. But clearly, there were gaps and improvements that needed to be made. And so the way I tried to do that as the Coordinator General is to work with community organisations, ethnic communications, community organisations, and not-for-profit organisations to try and identify where were the gaps that could be filled, where were the improvements that could be made. And then I worked very strongly with employers and corporate New South Wales to make sure that we could work together on trying to get a new and innovative employment program up. So that's taken a lot of my time over the last 2 years. Now, the good news is that the government has quite generously supported a significant improvement in the services provided in New South Wales. Overall, there's been about $177 million extra provided to support New South Wales services over the last 4 years. Now, I'm not going to go through the detail. You've got a press release which has it, but obviously there are a number of things we wanted to look at. Number one is education. Education is the key for the children of refugees to gain equal opportunity, and about half of those who come in the refugee intake are 40 to 50% are children's age. So we needed to make sure that the education they get would then allow them to go on and become full and effective citizens. So a significant amount of additional resources have gone into increasing the educational support, most of it in New South Wales public schools, but there have also been separate funding made available to the Catholic schools and the independent schools to help give additional support services to refugees in the classroom, and to make sure, of course, that they get the intensive English level support that they require. A lot of the resources have gone into health, and particularly refugee nurse programs, because when refugees come here, it is clear that once they arrive and we undertake medical checks, that the standard of their health is often less than we might have thought. Not surprising given their background. The other thing is, of course, many refugees, adults and children, are suffering significant trauma from the experience that they've gone through. So when we talk about additional health services being provided, it is mental health services and also trauma counselling services. Some of it's provided by the government itself, some of it via not-for-profit organisations like STARTS or like SSI or like the Red Cross or Anglicare. But here's the thing. Overall, we could improve and have improved educational services and health services. We put additional money into providing legal aid, which is very important for refugees. But the largest single gap that most communities have identified is in the area of employment. And so that's where a lot of our attention has gone in the last year. And therefore, I think probably the most interesting and innovative part of what New South Wales is doing, which isn't being done anywhere else in Australia, is to create a new program, a Refugee Employment Support Program, RESP or RESP. And that's only been going a few months, but the aim of it is to provide cased managed support. In other words, that refugees come in and they have a one-on-one discussion about what their experience is, what their skills are, what qualifications they have, what their aspirations are, what levels of English do they require. And so someone can sit down with refugees and talk about what are the most realistic pathways to get into employment. Often it's not going to happen overnight, but you need to have clear pathways, and they need to be discussed and indeed negotiated with the refugees themselves. So it's based upon those conversations. Now, already we've had, if you look at the number of refugees arriving in New South Wales, in the 2 years up until now, it's been about 15,500, 16,000 humanitarian entrants have come into New South Wales. To put that in perspective, normally in that period you'd expect probably 8,500, 9,000. So it's been a significant increase in the numbers, and about half of them are of working age. So the aim is to then provide them with support to help them get what they most want to do, of course, which is to be able to find education or to get employment so that they can start to become self-reliant again, to support their own families. So the Refugee Employment Support Program, it's been going only 5 months now. The aim of it is over the next 4 years, it's going to provide support for about 6,000 refugees and about 1,000 asylum seekers. So it's quite a large number will be going through the program. The good news is, and really why I wanted to talk to you, is that the program is working and seems to be working well. I think at the moment we've got almost 1,500 refugees that have started to get on the program. And many of them are going through testing, some of them are going through obviously improving English, a number of them are going into vocational education, because the New South Wales government, through the Smart and Skilled program, is making certificated training up to Certificate 4 available, free, with scholarships to refugees. And already, and this surprises me, we've got 150 people into employment. And on a separate scheme, which we're doing in the New South Wales Public Service, which of course is the largest employer in New South Wales, we're aiming at getting 100 people into employment, and we've got about 70 positions so far going to employment. So you can start to see that if you give the support that's necessary, if you actually design a program, and if you get refugees involved in having discussions about their aspirations and how to achieve them, you can start to actually improve the success of getting refugees into employment. And of course, many refugees don't just want to get into employment. Refugees are the group in Australia who are the most likely group to want to set up their own businesses. Very large proportion of family businesses in the refugee population. So this is getting them often jobs, but where they think, well, if I do this job for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I've got a chance of setting up my own business with my family. And the key to that, of course, is to make sure that we can have refugees as quickly as possible, not just being able to support their own lives, not only being self-reliant, not only getting that sense of control over their lives once more, but also, as they do that, contributing back to Australian society. We need the social welfare net, the settlement services when refugees first arrive. But if someone then has to spend the next 30 years living off that, that's not a success. Refugees don't want to do that. So what they want to do is to get that support, and then, as fast as they possibly can, to find their own employment and support their own families. So that's why I think the Refugee Employment Support Program is such an exciting initiative. And I didn't want to talk to you until we've done about the first 5 or 6 months to make sure it's working. I can now hand on heart tell you this is a program that is working, and over the next 12 months, next 24 months, we'll see an increasing number of refugees be able to use that support and that program and that mentoring and that employment opportunities to get on their own 2 feet. Very happy to take any questions if you'd like on that.
How many refugees in total are we taking in Australia, and how many of them are going through the program that you mentioned just now?
So in New South Wales, which is obviously my focus, in a normal year here we would take about 4,500 people who arrive on humanitarian visas of one sort or another. With the increase that the Commonwealth Government made to take an extra 12,000 refugees, New South Wales ended up taking about 6,500 of those. So that's what I'm saying. Usually we run at about 4,500 a year. We're now, in the last 2 years, run at, as I say, about 16,000. I don't think in the year ahead we'll come back to about 4,500. It's probably more likely to be, I suspect, around 6,000 refugees. So that gives you, if you like, the total number. Give or take, about half of those are adults. Some of them, of course, are single parents, particularly single mothers, who are not immediately looking for work. So of those that are arriving, we will be able to provide support to a significant proportion of people who want entry to the program. Anything else you'd like to know?
So for the program, is it more, how do you define the program? Do you see the program as a classification system? Like, how do you sort out what kind of family goes to what kind of jobs, or receive to decide the level of support they're going to receive, or is it going to be a case-by-case, longitudinal support?
So it's a case-by-case approach, because my view is that that's what we need to make it work. Of course, refugees get access now to the Commonwealth's Job Active network, okay, and many of them can go there and find employment. But what we've realised is in those first couple of years, you really need intensive support, one-on-one support. I sort of see it almost like in the emergency department in a hospital, when it's triaged and people arrive and you have a discussion with each about what needs to be done, what priorities you set, and that's almost the same, sitting down with some. And of course you have to find out, someone may say, I have overseas qualifications in engineering or in accounting. That can mean a huge range of things. So what level do they have? What level of English do they have to use it? What qualifications do they have? Or what level of qualifications might help them to get that employment? So it is a one-on-one approach through the program. In my view, it's the only thing that's going to be able to work effectively. And sometimes that's going to involve relatively tough conversations about, having realistic prospects. It's no use saying, well, I've arrived here and I'm a dentist and I can't get a job as a dentist. Because the reality is, the first thing is, well, you've got to get a professional level of English, and this is how to do it. You need to be able to get within a university context, so the university, and this is how to do it. You probably need to have someone help mentor you, maybe a dentist or an ex-dentist, and we can arrange that. What happens with refugees, as you know, there's a lot of luck at the moment, a lot of serendipity. You meet a refugee who's been successful, and you find out that they've bumped into someone, or someone's introduced them to an ex-high school principal or something like that, and that person has been able to help them. Now, we've got to take the luck out and do it in a structured way. So my view is, if you have refugees come into the Refugee Employment Support Program and to have a discussion, then there is the opportunity to think, not how I get a job next week, but how over this next 1 or 2 years I can position myself, not just to get a job, but actually to get a job that's got employment and career prospects. And that's what's missing at the moment. So it is, as you put it, one by one, case by case.
So who is qualified to do the program? How you choose the people?
So essentially, the program is delivered for the New South Wales government by Settlement Services International, SSI, and it's focused predominantly on Western Sydney, although we're also working with a significant group from Wollongong in Illawarra as well, and that will increase over time. Essentially, anybody who is come here under a humanitarian visa and is of working age and wants help, at the moment they can go and apply to join the program. There are some limits set, but we haven't reached those at the moment. As I say, we're looking at 6,000 refugees, 1,000 asylum seekers to be helped over this next 4 years, which is, a significant proportion of the working age population that are arriving and are actually looking for employment.
How many people in total to join that program to support the people?
You mean who work in the Refugee Employment
Yes.
Support Program? I don't have the number on that, and partly this is because it's still expanding. But also, one of the very nice things is that they are doing it with funded positions, funded by the New South Wales government, and a significant number. But there are also a significant number of people who are helping the program on a voluntary basis, either working directly for the Refugee Employment Support Program or providing mentoring support or work opportunities support. The aim is actually to try and get as many people as we can, particularly employers, supporting the program, and obviously doing that on a volunteer basis. Great if they can provide employment opportunities, but even support programs or work experience programs are also very useful.
Is the program involved in the location of the settlement for the refugees? And do you have the figures or the data where they are settled and the consideration behind the location?
So we have based it predominantly in Western Sydney and Wollongong, and the reason is very obvious. As the number of refugees has expanded over the last 2 years, and have come predominantly from the Middle East, from Syria and Iraq in particular, they have tended to settle in Western Sydney. And that's because almost half of them, or in fact half of them, are being sponsored by their families here in Australia. So if, for example, they are Armenians from Aleppo, or they're Assyrians or Chaldeans or Mandaeans or Sunni or Shia, to a very large extent the families that are supporting them and sponsoring them live in Western Sydney, predominantly Fairfield, to a lesser extent in Liverpool. So that's where we are focusing at the moment. But here's the thing, the refugee selection and where they are sent for initial settlement is a matter for the Commonwealth Government, not for the state government. So we've responded to where people have gone. But of course, refugees are just like any other Australians. They are free to move where they want to. You don't say you've got to live there. And so what we have realised is there are a significant number of regional communities, some of whom already do take some initial settlement of refugees, but others who would like to be host to refugees. So increasingly, as this Refugee Employment Support Program gets up, we're also looking at the opportunity for some people in Western Sydney to be able to think, well, I might prefer opportunities for my family and for employment by going to places like Albury or Wagga Wagga or Coffs Harbour, for example, which already take refugees, or even new areas. We've just seen, of course, Armidale has now got access, but a number of communities, Griffith, Leeton and so on, are actually interested in taking groups of refugee families and providing support, and of course in many instances there are employment opportunities. So over this next 12 months, one of the things we are going to increasingly focus on is for families in Western Sydney who may be interested in moving into regional New South Wales, helping to make that process occur, give them the opportunity to do so if they want to. It will be relatively small numbers, but there are a number of refugee groups, many African refugee groups, who are very attracted to actually going and working in rural and regional New South Wales rather than staying in the city.